The west, which will get pretty heavy this evening for Wales and especially Northern Ireland. Some downpours here. That rain spreads across much of Scotland through this evening. The risk of some heavy showers and even some lightning across East Anglia and the southeast through the evening.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Gloria De Piero, we're talking cost of living as the Bank of England warns of apocalyptic rises in food prices, and of course we'll bring you the latest on the row with the EU of the Northern Ireland Protocol, plus passport delays, and should the House of Lords move to Stoke-on-Trent? All that after your news with Rosie. Good afternoon, it's 12 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. The Foreign Secretary is expected to set out plans to rewrite Britain's post-Brexit trading agreement, changing the rules on how goods enter Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK. Liz Truss is going to announce new legislation in the Commons later, a day after Boris Johnson met with political parties in Belfast. The country's Unionist Party is refusing to enter a power sharing at Stormont unless the existing Northern Ireland Protocol is scrapped. In Ukraine, the Deputy Prime Minister says the country is working on further stages of evacuating fighters who are still stuck in the steel plant in Mariupol. More than 260 servicemen have already been evacuated from the besieged Azovstal steelworks. Some are injured and they've been taken to hospital in a Russian-controlled town. All evacuees will be subject to an exchange. Well, Michael Ryan has worked in NATO policy, told GB News it's likely he thinks Moscow's trying to show goodwill to improve their negotiating position.
I would expect that there will be a prisoner swap. The Ukrainians have a significant number of Russian prisoners. The Russians would not be able to argue away in the style of propaganda that they're used to what would happen to these soldiers if they're not brought back alive. And so I would definitely see a transactional prisoner swap.
Volunteer police officers are going to be given the power to use tasers under new plans by the Home Office. There are nearly 9,000 special constables in England and Wales, and they currently undertake the same duties as regular police officers. Amnesty International has called the move dangerous, saying misuse of tasers can lead to harm and even death. Well, earlier today, Boris Johnson told his cabinet that crime rates must be addressed and that making the streets safe is a government priority.
Because it's only when you have safe streets, when you have safe communities, that you get the confidence of business to invest and drive jobs and growth. And that is absolutely critical now as we deal with the aftershocks of COVID, we help people with their current costs, and we take the economy through a difficult patch.
The rate of unemployment in the first quarter of the year dropped to its lowest it's been for almost 50 years, to 3.7%. The Office for National Statistics says the number of people in employment rose to 29.5 million. However, figures also showed that in the 3 months to February, real pay value reduced by 2%. That's the steepest decline in nearly a decade. The Governor of the Bank of England has called the rising cost of food prices apocalyptic. Andrew Bailey gave the warning to MPs at a government select committee yesterday. Northern Ireland Secretary Brandon Lewis says he's surprised at the term used, but acknowledges the challenges people are currently facing. He says it's important the government offers packages of support and keeps global pressures under review. 4 chief inspectors are warning the criminal justice system is far from recovering from the pandemic and that some areas are operating at unacceptable levels. In a joint report, they expressed their serious concern, saying court delays have an adverse impact on victims and defendants. They added a lack of support for prisoners will lead to many more reoffending. The head of MI5 is warning that foreign spies are targeting government officials, high-tech businesses and academics using online networking sites. More than 10,000 disguised approaches have been made by agents using fake profiles on social media sites to gain national security information. The government has launched a new app to help people verify which online contacts they accept. Television writer Kay Mellor, who wrote series including Girlfriends, Band of Gold and The Syndicate, has died. Leeds-born Mellor created the drama Children's Ward and was best known for writing the BAFTA-nominated Fat Friends series, which starred her actress daughter, Gaynor Faye. A spokesperson for her TV production company, Roland Productions, announced she died on Sunday, saying, "We've lost a phenomenal talent." She was 71. The Queen has made an unexpected visit to London's Paddington Station today to see London's new Crossrail project. The Queen unveiled a plaque stating that she officially opened the Elizabeth line. Also in attendance was Prince Edward, the Prime Minister and the Mayor of London, who were meeting with key staff to mark the completion of the project. The new service opens to the public next week. You're up to date on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to the briefing with Gloria.
Coming up this hour on The Briefing, the Governor of the Bank of England has warned of apocalyptic food price rises. I'll ask Jonathan Goulis, Conservative MP for Stoke-on-Trent North, what the government can do. And he's keen on Michael Gove's suggestion to move the House of Lords to Stoke-on-Trent. Is that a crazy idea that will never fly, or the perfect way to show the government is serious about levelling up? We'll bring you the latest from Northern Ireland, and Foreign Secretary Liz Truss will lay out plans to override parts of the protocol if the EU doesn't budge and give ground. We'll bring you that live. Going on holiday this summer? Is your passport still valid? We'll talk to a woman who is nearly £1,000 out of pocket because she couldn't get her new passport in time. Give me your political briefing. Send in your views and opinions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. We're going to cross live, first of all, to our Northern Ireland reporter, Dougie Beattie. Dougie. Hi, good to see you. Just bring us up to date on what happened at those talks with the Prime Minister and the respective parties' leaders yesterday.
Well, as you know, the Prime Minister visited here yesterday. It's all about getting this place behind me up and running once again. He met with the main parties. Sinn Féin came out of there looking very aggravated by the whole thing. The DUP came back out and they're saying the same thing as they have all along here. They're not going to do anything until they see action. Even the legislation that's being put through the House today is going to be words until it's actually put into something. And that's the problem, because this is being used by Liz Truss as a negotiating tactic with the EU, basically saying to them, if you're not prepared to meet us halfway, we will have legislation in place that will bring that for us. Now, that is causing other problems in Dublin today. Richie Neal, the very influential senator out of the Ways and Means Commission, he would be one of the main men that would say whether Britain was getting a trade deal with the US or not. He's in Dublin today, expected to be here probably on Thursday. Boris himself left here yesterday. I don't think he was any further forward than he was when he came. But Liz Truss is also going to announce today stuff around legacy and where that's going in Northern Ireland. That is extremely controversial here. That's all about soldiers being brought back to stand trial over things that they've already been investigated for, and of course the Irish Language Act. But why is Northern Ireland's protocol so important? Well, we've heard about food shortages or food prices rising at quite a rate. Well, Northern Ireland only represents 3% of the UK, but it makes as much as 20% of the food there. And farming is now coming right to the forefront of where Britain is really at. We have seen seed potatoes out of Scotland not being able to be brought into Europe and not being able to be brought into Northern Ireland. With what's going on in the Ukraine, what's going on around corn and wheat, all of that is going to come back into the food chain. And if goods are coming from the UK into Northern Ireland and they're costing more because of transportation costs and checks, and that raw materials are coming here, being fed into the ground and then returned to the UK, well, of course, food prices will rise. So a lot of this may be down and looked at the DUP as if they're getting some sort of benefit here. But I think a lot of this will be the Tory government looking at how they can manage to hold on to their own food and keep those prices at a lower level. So it'll be interesting to see today exactly what Liz Truss has to say.
It certainly will, and of course we'll bring our viewers that statement live. Doogie BT, thank you. Now, prices are soaring and the Bank of England has warned of apocalyptic rises in food prices that are on the way. That's on top of rocketing energy bills, sky-high petrol prices. The government has been criticised for not doing enough to help, and the cost of living crisis, it seems, is going to get even worse. Well, joining me now is Jonathan Goulis, Conservative MP for Stoke-on-Trent North. Jonathan, we know you're keen on Michael Gove's suggestion to move the House of Lords to Stoke-on-Trent while repair work is going on in Parliament. I promise that we are going to talk to you about that idea. But first, as you know, people are hurting. Inflation is now at 7%. The Bank of England say there's more pain on the way. They expect it to peak over 10% during the final quarter of the year. Things are going to get worse. The government needs to act.
Well, look, Gloria, when we heard the Governor of the Bank of England yesterday, I shared the same feeling as many of my constituents, which is that sinking in the stomach feeling. You know, it's not what you want to hear at the end of the day, that things are going to get tougher. I don't think the government has shied away from that fact, to be quite brutal, to be honest. This is, you know, an incredibly difficult time. As you say, with rising energy costs, rising food prices. You know, I've got my inbox, you know, with people who are concerned. I see people in my surgeries. You'll know this from your time as a Member of Parliament as well. So I do understand and empathise very sincerely with people about the challenges that they face. But the government has been acting. You know, we've injected about £22 billion into the system, whether that's increasing the national living wage, rising the national insurance threshold from July, which will be about £330 a year for over 70%, or about 70% of people who will therefore actually have a tax cut, even with the new health and social care levy in place. And in places like Stoke-on-Trent, where salaries are sadly still below national averages, that means that those people who are on those lower incomes are going to get that support. The universal credit rate, taper rate cut as well, which is a tax cut for 2 million working families, £1,000 a year into their pockets. So, and then they had the 9.1 billion spent on energy, with £150 council tax rebate bans A to D properties. 94% of those are in Stoke-on-Trent, so that's a lot of people getting that help. And then the £200 smoothing rebate as well. So this is a government that has been acting, but it's also a government that's monitoring the situation closely and will take action if necessary, as it has done in the past with all the things I've outlined just now, but also with furlough, for example, during the COVID pandemic. So, I do have every faith in the Prime Minister and the Chancellor that when the big decisions are needed to be made, they'll come up trumps.
The Labour Party say the crisis or the situation is at crisis point and an emergency budget is needed now. Do you back that?
Well, the government has obviously got things being injected later on the year. As I say, the national insurance rise will come in July. The £200 smoothing rebate is due later this year as well. There's the £1 billion household support fund, which is for discretionary for local authorities to use when it comes to energy, but also to food support. So, there are all these other things in place.
I think the government's doing enough. Is that basically your position? The government is doing enough?
I think the government is acting responsibly with the public's finances and injecting support in many different ways to particularly those people on lowest incomes. However, with what's predicted later in the year, in October, there's an awful lot of anxiety, and the government has acted in the past. It is acting now, and I have every faith it will act again if needs be.
There'll be a vote today, this evening, on a windfall tax on the profits of energy companies. The Labour Party will force that vote by amending the Queen's Speech vote. They say that if you introduced that levy, that windfall tax on the energy companies, it would provide much-needed relief. The money raised would provide much-needed relief from energy prices. Will you be voting with Labour this evening?
Gloria, the Labour Party are playing party pistol games at a time when, people are rightfully worried about the rising cost of energy and obviously the rising cost of food. I'm not going to get involved in their petty games. They've done this before. This is not what people are interested in, to be quite frank. I'm up here in Stoke-on-Trent right now, out and about in my community, talking to people, hearing from them about the support that they've had to date and what more support can be accessed. And I just think the Labour Party need to act a bit more like grown-ups, to be honest with you, and talk about long-term, how do we solve this with energy security, investing in nuclear, investing in offshore wind, creating those new high-skilled, high-wage jobs, of which Stoke-on-Trent, it was reported today, will be the third fastest in the UK for jobs growth at the end of 2023, outperforming London, Leeds, Birmingham and Manchester. We've had the 56 million from the Levelling Up Fund, 31 million to Bus Back Better, 500 brand new jobs from the Home Office. Stoke-on-Trent was a city that was forgotten under Labour when they controlled this city for 7 decades. It's under this government, under this Conservative-led council and your 3 Conservative MPs that we're starting to see Stoke-on-Trent firmly put back on the map.
Well, Stoke-on-Trent has certainly been in the news of late. Mooted that the House of Lords, our peers, should, when Parliament has its long-awaited refurbishment, should move out of London, perhaps to Stoke-on-Trent. Would it make any difference?
It'd make a massive difference. And I don't think any peer should fear coming to the fantastic city of Stoke-on-Trent. We have, I'm sure most of them have got generations worth of high-quality fine china that they eat off in their homes. They can come to Stoke-on-Trent and see where that was made firsthand, whether that be, through Churchill China, Steelite, Burley, or many other fantastic local companies. But they also should come out here because this is massively important for levelling up. They need to come and talk to people, the hard-working people of Stoke-on-Trent, Kidsgrove and Talk, the backbone of this nation, the heartbeat of the Industrial Revolution under James Brindley and Josiah Wedgwood, who built the Trent Mersey Canal. We had the pits, we had the pots. We were the beating heart of the nation in terms of that. And obviously, we're on a revival. We're levelling up. We've had the 56 million Levelling Up Fund, 31 million to Bus Back Better, 17.6 million Kidsgrove Town. 5 million Home Office jobs. This is why they should come see Levelling Up in action and talk to people and understand that when they're busy blocking things like the Police Crime Sentencing Courts Bill or Nationality and Borders Bill, they're more than welcome to come out with me. I'll take them round Ball Green. They can go and have a chat to people and see why they want to see these legislation put in place.
Wouldn't it be more symbolic? Because I think it'd be great if our representatives moved outside of London for a bit. But wouldn't it be better if our elected representatives, because, of course, MPs are going to have to be outside of Parliament when Parliament has its refurbishment. Shouldn't the case be for MPs to do their jobs outside of London, and maybe they would all get a bit more back in touch?
Gloria, I think you all know this. You were a hard-working MP in Ashfield. You were out and about in your community on a regular basis, holding surgeries, attending events, holding community meetings, whether that be about bus services or the local hospital or GP surgery. MPs are regularly out and about outside the Westminster bubble in their community, serving those people that they're proud to represent. And so I'm just delighted to have that opportunity on a daily basis. And look, I'm here in Stoke-on-Trent. I'm not down in London at the moment, although I will be later this evening, as you say, for this vote. But ultimately, I think that that decision, I know, is something that's coming down in 2023 for people to, for the House of Commons to decide about what we do. And I'll wait to see all the different options on the table at that time.
Final question. The government were going to ban buy one, get one free offers for unhealthy foods. They're not going to do that now, so-called bog-off deals. Is that a sensible thing to do when people are struggling, or is it a wasted opportunity to tackle rising obesity levels?
I think that people are capable of making their own decisions for themselves. And if they want to buy one, get one free, that should be their choice. It's not for the government to tell people what they can and can't have or how the supermarket should be laid out. We should expect the supermarkets to act responsibly. We have to trust in supermarkets to behave in a responsible way. We have many fantastic community champions in our local supermarkets who go out and about supporting people. And look, Gloria, I'm guilty. I do like to get a couple of dairy milks or a couple of packs of wine gums when I'm at the counter sometimes, which is why the wasteland's expanded bigger than it should have done. And Mrs. Gullis is on my case on that one. But ultimately, that is my choice. I'm well educated enough to know if I made a poor decision there, and people should be willing to take responsibility for themselves to not be tempted at better times.
Jonathan Goulis, good to chat to you today. Thank you. Now, summer holidays could be at risk as passport delays continue. I'll be joined from Blaenau Gwent by Laura, who's nearly £1,000 out of pocket as a result of her passport being delayed, and her MP Nick Smith will be here too. Before that, it is time for your weather.
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather outlook. A warm, sunny day for many places today. In the west, though, it's a different story. Much more cloud here with the potential for some pretty heavy showers, especially later on. There's a big area of low pressure out west. It's not really moving very far, but it's throwing up this weather front, which is just going to drape itself across parts of Northern Ireland, West Wales, Western Scotland, the far southwest of England. So in this zone, quite a lot of cloud and at times some showers, which will turn heavy, particularly later on. For many central and eastern parts, though, it is a fine day. Plenty of warm, hazy sunshine out there. A few coasts, particularly in the far northeast, staying a little misty. And if we keep that mist or ha, temperatures will struggle. But in the sunshine, a very warm one, 24, 25, maybe 26 across parts of the southeast. Cooler with the wetter weather further west, which will get pretty heavy this evening for Wales and especially Northern Ireland. Some downpours here. That rain spreads across much of Scotland through this evening. The risk of some heavy showers and even some lightning across East Anglia and the southeast through the evening. But you can see it all shifts away pretty rapidly to the north. So for many of us, most of the night will be dry once we've lost those evening downpours. Temperatures down to 10 or 11 Celsius in most towns and cities. Another fine day for quite a few of us on Wednesday. A few showers through the night and early on across the far northwest of Scotland and for Northern Ireland, but they also tend to zip away. And a brighter day generally for Northern Ireland tomorrow, West Wales, southwest England, more sunshine. And for most it is a day of hazy sunshine, and although not as warm as today, still pretty warm. Temperatures widely in the high teens or low 20s, maybe 24 across the southeast. Again, a little cooler around some coasts. And again, the potential later on for some heavy rain to come into Northern Ireland and the risk of thunderstorms drifting up from France over parts of England and Wales, and the potential for some really heavy ones for a time through tomorrow evening across East Anglia and the southeast. Bye for now.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The founder of a far-right terror group whose members plotted to carry out deadly attacks has been found guilty of involvement with the organisation. 27-year-old Alex Davis set up National Action 9 years ago and continued to associate with the group and its offshoot organisations after it was banned by the government in 2016. The conviction of Davis, who's from Swansea, is the last in a raft of 19 prosecutions of those who continued their membership of the group after it was outlawed. Our Home and Security editor Mark White takes a look at the background to this case.
Deep in this woodland in Wiltshire, these far-right extremists are seen training for the race war they were determined to spark. Members of the banned terror group National Action, who continued to meet, plot and spread their hateful ideology long after the group was outlawed by the government. Walking past the camera is the group's founder, Alex Davis, about to start boxing with another young extremist who went on to join the police. Davis was still a teenager when he set up National Action in 2013, focusing his attentions on recruiting the young and the impressionable.
Turn away, Alex.
Within a few short years, the group had reached national prominence, staging sometimes violent protests in support of a neo-Nazi ideology. They specifically targeted university campuses and town centres, like here in Bath, where Alex Davis got more than he bargained for when he was confronted by an angry mother.
My daughter's mixed race. Come on. Should she be booted out?
I don't know. She looks white to me.
She is not. She is mixed race.
Now Davis has been found guilty of continued association with National Action and various offshoot organisations set up to try to circumvent a government ban after the group was outlawed in 2016. It is the culmination of a multi-year investigation by counter-terrorism detectives.
Alex Davis held these views, these abhorrent views of a race war, of white supremacy, of harking back to Nazi Germany in the 30s and 40s, things that most right-minded people in this country find completely against everything they stand for.
In total, 19 people have now been convicted for their membership of National Action, including Alice Cutter, whose adoration of the Nazis was so profound she even entered a Miss Hitler beauty pageant and spoke of gassing synagogues. Her boyfriend, Mark Jones, was jailed for 5.5 years for his involvement in the group. And Metropolitan Police Officer Ben Hannum, who posted this picture of himself with a Hitler moustache to fellow extremists.
No, it's my design. I got that too.
Even as he applied to join the police, he was still meeting regularly with the group, training, posting flyers and spray painting their logo on buildings. The organisation also recruited members of the military, like Mikko Vehviläinen, a Lance Corporal with the Royal Anglian Regiment, jailed for 8 years. Jack Renshaw was jailed for life for a plot to murder the Labour MP Rosie Cooper. And Jack Coulson, who was just 17 when he was convicted of constructing a pipe bomb.
Those individuals within National Action were incredibly dangerous. And the ideology they espoused was an ideology of hatred, which caused division in communities across the country.
A common factor with almost all of Alex Davis's National Action recruits was their youth, either in their teens or early 20s.
He very much had worked out how to target the propaganda element of the recruiting process at young people, and how to make the most of the internet, and how to make the most of memes to spread that message, and also to take that message out into the communities he was aiming at.
Hey, right, who's going to volunteer go first?
Almost a decade after National Action was formed, founder Alex Davis and many of its members are now behind bars. Islamist extremism is still by far the most potent threat the country faces. But authorities say far-right extremism remains a key and growing concern. Mark White, GB News.
Now, we've all heard about the long delays in getting passports. Perhaps you have been a victim of this. Well, joining me now to talk about this, who has been campaigning on getting this right, is the Labour MP for Blaenau Gwent, Nick Smith, who has had many constituents contact him about it. And I want to talk to you about one particular constituent, Laura, who we had been hoping to join us today. Just tell us about Laura's case.
So Laura had applied for a passport for her daughter Harriet, who's 7, to go on holiday to Disneyland. But there was delay reported from the passport office. Because of that, Laura had to rebook her holiday, and it's cost the family around about £900, and she's been frantic with worry over it over the last few weeks. It looks to have been solved now, but it's cost her a lot of grief and upset within the family, and it's not unusual. I've had about 20 constituents come to me about these sorts of issues in the last few weeks, and I've had to raise it with government ministers because I've been getting really poor answers.
And yes, you forced ministers to what we call the dispatch box. You forced ministers to reply to what is known as an urgent question in Parliament last week about this. What were you asking for?
I was trying to find out what's going on at the Home Office. Because of the delays I'd experienced, I raised it with the Speaker. He realised it was a big issue, not just in Blaenau Gwent, but across the country too. And when we had this urgent question, which is when the Minister is hauled in to the chamber to hear questions from other MPs, it became clear that it's been a big problem. Many people, other MPs, talked about waiting for hours to get an answer on the telephone. We're supposed to have a special service, an MP's hotline, but that's been failing.
Really?
Yeah.
Just to explain that MP's hotline, so because I would have had it too when I was an MP, so MPs can sort of call a direct line if a constituent comes to their MP and say, please help me, my passport's supposed to be here, and there's no sign of it. But even that MP's hotline is you've been having difficulty getting through on that?
It's failed. The telephony system has let everybody down. I've had caseworkers of mine spending hours on the phone and being unable to get through. I've had my caseworker at the House of Commons go through downstairs to the Home Office. Staff supposed to be there to help us, but the team there in Parliament, can't get through on their systems to look at the cases you bring to them. It's been a fiasco.
And I guess one thing that has been unique about the current situation is, of course, during the pandemic, nobody travelled. So lots of us didn't bother renewing our passports. So there's a lot of pent-up demand. And perhaps this is just one of those things that's happened because everyone's suddenly applying for passports when they haven't over 2 years, that it's unforeseen circumstances?
Well, you could make that case, although you could also say, after 2 years of not being able to get away, it would be predictable that passport applications would go up. Ministers have just said recently that this year there'll be over 9 million people putting in passport applications. And so that's something that needs to be addressed much sooner rather than later. It's been a problem these last few weeks, but I want to try and make sure, and other MPs too, being fair, banging the drum and saying, listen, you've got to get this right for the summer so that people can get away.
And to be fair to the government, they are employing more staff.
They are. They've told us, I think there's going to be 700 more staff and there's going to be extra telephony. So all that's good, and you applaud them for that because it's important that someone does something good, you say, thumbs up. However, in recent weeks, when I've said to the government, how big is the backlog? How many people are waiting? It used to be 3 weeks to get a passport application through the government sausage machine. Now it's 10 weeks. When are you going to be able to get back to 3 weeks? And I've asked them, I think, 9 further parliamentary questions in the last few days to try to get to the bottom of this. And it's hard to understand what the government's metrics are for improving performance over the next few months. So I hope to get answers this next week from the government, which will help people who will be concerned about their summer holidays. But the last few weeks has made me a little bit afraid things could be worse than we'd all hope.
And just for people who might be in the same predicament as those in your constituency, it's probably still worth them going to see their MP, isn't it, for you to have a go at whether you can speed things up. Is that right? Yeah,
of course. And listen, and what I say to all constituents is send me as much information as possible, as early as possible, and then we can take it up for you. Do it by email in the first instance, so we can bang it off to the Home Office and seek their support. But the most important thing is the Home Office get their act together. These new staff that are in the pipeline need to be able to have access to the systems as soon as possible, and they need to be able to turn it around too. There's been some problems, by the way, with the delivery team who've been sending passports out to people. At the start of this year, over 1,000 passports and documents were lost out of the system. Got to make sure they get the quality right as well. I'm going to ask the Public Accounts Committee later on today, I'm a member of that, to look into this issue to see if that can be helped. Maybe the National Audit Office could do a quick investigation.
And that just looks at whether government's money is being spent as effectively as our money, say the government's money, it's taxpayers' money, whether it's being put to the best use. I mean, I'm trying to put myself in Laura's position. I reckon I'd want someone to foot that bill. I'd feel really aggrieved that I had to find the around £900, and when it wasn't my fault, she did apply with several weeks to go before she was due to go on that family trip, didn't she?
Yeah, when she applied, she tells me that she says the website said there would be a 5-week delay, and that still would have left plenty of time for her to get her application sorted out and passport back in good time. It didn't happen. The issue is, has there been poor administration by the government here for her to have a case? And that's why we need to see if there's been systemic problems. And that's why I think a National Audit Office look at all of this, could perhaps get to the bottom of it. And the Home Office shouldn't be marking their own homework here. If there's been a problem with poor administration, sometimes having someone else independent take a look helps you buck your ideas up. And I hope that'll happen sooner rather than later.
And I suppose that the good thing, if there isn't a good thing to that, for those people booking summer holidays, this has been getting quite a lot of news, these passport delays. So the hope is anybody who is planning to go on holiday this summer, get your new passport now. Is that basically the message?
Yeah,
start the process.
Bang your application in now. I mean, there has been a problem with the administration recently where people, because they're unclear where their application has gone, have been sending in multiple emails to government offices around the country, and that's sort of clogging up the system. The government needs to have a very straightforward way of doing this, so people are clear about what's being asked of them and then can turn it around as quickly as possible. That's what's needed over the next few weeks in advance of a summer rush.
And while we have you in the studio, there haven't been many votes in Parliament because you've all been debating the measures in the Queen's speech. There will be a vote on the Queen's speech, the legislative programme that the government wants to introduce this evening in Parliament. Labour is seeking to amend that, isn't it? Just tell me what you're trying to force a vote on this evening.
Yeah, the big vote, the potent vote this evening is about a windfall tax on energy companies to try and help families out across the country. We're saying there's been windfall profiteering for energy companies in the last few months. The big energy companies have made money hand over fist in recent weeks. They haven't put any extra investment in to get that. And therefore we think it's fair that they be asked to stump up and support families across the country who are having to pay high energy costs or for their petrol. I filled my car on the weekend, and for the first time it was over £100 to fill up my tank. And I'm not the only one with that difficulty, I know. So energy companies, this time, a one-off, a windfall tax, need to stump up. I hope that goes through. It's an important Labour Party initiative, and I hope that members of the government party listen and understand it's fair and reasonable and support it too.
The only way you could get this through, because there's more Conservatives, obviously, because they won the election than there are all of the opposition MPs put together. You need Conservative MPs to vote with you this evening. It's not going to happen, is it?
Well, that's not to say we shouldn't keep pushing and prodding and see if we can bring this issue forward. I thought it was quite interesting on the weekend when Kwasi Kwarteng, the business secretary, said he was dead against having a windfall tax, but Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor's outriders, were briefing that it's still a possibility. So it looks like it's in the government's in tray. So it's up to us as a reasonable opposition, the Labour Party, to keep forcing the issue and to get the government to listen.
And just on an issue we were discussing earlier about the House of Lords moving out of London while Parliament's going to get refurbished. The debate about whether it should be refurbished while it's in pretty bad nick, but nobody ever wants to vote. MPs never want to vote for, because it's going to cost a fortune to refurbish it. Nevertheless, it will have to be done at some point. This big debate about whether, while it's being done, then the House of Lords, so the non-elected chamber, should get out there and head up to Stoke or York or, I'm sure you would say, Blaenau Gwent.
So, listen, I'm really in favour of government departments, government agencies, all of those things being shared around the country. It would be good for Blaenau Gwent and South Wales if we got important government offices, government departments coming to our region in the UK. Having said that, I think this is just a Michael Gove spitballing idea. I don't think he's thought through the consequences of it. The House of Lords will need bags of security. It needs to be close to the House of Commons, because whilst we drive legislation, they do an important job scrutinising us. And I think it's a nonsense idea. I wish the government would come forward with decent, practical, straightforward ideas that are implementable, rather than coming up with this nonsense.
It'd be nice if MPs... the elected representatives could rotate around the country while Parliament was restored. Bit of time in Blaenau Gwent, bit of time in my former constituency. It'd be great, wouldn't it? I don't know if it's practical, but it'd send a symbol. Well, there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, listen, and I'm a big fan of devolved government too. I'd be in favour of more decentralised government, and I'd like to spend more time. I've not properly been to Bradford, so it would be lovely to do that. But I don't think it's practical. I think the issues are, these days, unfortunately, around defence. Gloria, you'll remember when you were an MP, how much we had to ramp up defence to keep us safe and to keep our staff safe. And, I think that, unfortunately, is likely to be the sticking point.
Nick Smith, MP for Blaenau Gwent, been very generous with your time, and thank you for, I'm sure lots of constituents actually would say thank you to all you have done on raising those passport delays. As you say, the government have now recruited more staff, and God willing, passport delays will become a thing of the past. But thank you for highlighting it, not just in Parliament, but on the programme today, and urging actually anybody who's dealing with consequences of passport delays to get in touch with their MP. Nick Smith, thank you. Come back again soon. We've enjoyed your company. We are going live to the House of Commons, where the Foreign Secretary is about to give a statement. But for now, we have some news about Priti Patel. We're going live to the Commons.
The reason I let it run on because we were moving the writs early and we were late starting. Before I call the Secretary of State, I wish to make a short statement in context of this session. I'm exercising the discretion given to the Chair in respect of the resolution on sub judice matters to further extend the waiver granted for proceedings in January to allow full reference to the challenge to the Northern Ireland Protocol and to allow limited reference to the active legal proceedings. I will now call the Secretary of State. Elizabeth Truss. Secretary Truss.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to update the House on the Northern Ireland Protocol and to lay out the next steps. Our first priority is to uphold the Belfast Good Friday Agreement in all its dimensions. That agreement put in place a new arrangement for the governance of Northern Ireland and these islands composed of 3 interlocking strands: a power-sharing government at Stormont on the basis of consent and parity of esteem for all communities, intensified North-South cooperation on the island of Ireland, and enhanced arrangements for East-West cooperation. So much of the progress that we have seen in Northern Ireland rests on this agreement, and for the agreement to continue to operate successfully, all 3 strands must function successfully. These are the arrangements, are the foundation on which the modern, thriving Northern Ireland is built. It commands the support of parties across this House, and we will continue to work with all communities in Northern Ireland to protect it. As a government, we want to see a First Minister and Deputy First Minister in place, and we want to work with them to make further progress. The basis for successful power sharing remains strong, as my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, laid out yesterday. However, the Belfast Good Friday Agreement is under strain, and regrettably, the Northern Ireland Executive has not been fully functioning since early February. This is because the Northern Ireland Protocol does not have the support necessary in one part of the community in Northern Ireland. I would also note that all of Northern Ireland's political parties agree on the need for changes to the protocol. The practical problems are clear to see. As the House will know, the protocol has not yet been implemented in full due to the operation of grace periods and easements. However, EU customs procedures for moving goods within the UK have already meant companies are facing significant costs and paperwork. Some businesses have stopped trade altogether. These challenges have been sharpened by the post-COVID economic recovery. Rules on taxation mean that citizens in Northern Ireland are unable to benefit fully from the same advantages as the rest of the UK, like the reduction in VAT on solar panels. SPS rules mean that producers face onerous restrictions, including veterinary certification, in order to sell foodstuffs in shops in Northern Ireland. These practical problems have contributed to the sense that the East-West relationship has been undermined. Without resolving these and other issues, we will not be able to re-establish the executive and preserve the hard-won progress sustained by the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. We need to restore the balance in the agreement. Mr. Speaker, our preference is to reach a negotiated outcome with the EU, and we have worked tirelessly to that end and will continue to do so. I have had 6 months of negotiations with Vice President Maros Sefcovic. This follows a year of discussions undertaken by my predecessor. The UK has proposed what we believe to be a comprehensive and reasonable solution to deliver on the objectives of the protocol. This includes a trusted trader scheme to provide the EU with real-time commercial data, giving them confidence that goods intended for Northern Ireland are not entering the EU single market. We're already sharing over 1 million rows of goods movement data with the EU every week. Our proposed solution would meet both our and the EU's original objectives for the protocol. It would address the frictions in East-West trade while protecting the EU single market and the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. The challenge is that this solution requires a change in the protocol itself, as its current drafting prevents it from being implemented. But the EU's mandate does not allow the protocol to be changed. That is why their current proposals are not able to address the fundamental concerns. In fact, it's our assessment that they would go backward from the situation we have today with the standstill. As the Prime Minister said, our shared objective has to be to find a solution that can command the broadest possible cross-community support for years to come and protect the Belfast Good Friday Agreement in all its dimensions. That is why I am announcing our intention to introduce legislation in the coming weeks to make changes in the protocol. Our preference remains a negotiated solution with the EU, and in parallel with the legislation being introduced, we remain open to further talks if we can achieve the same outcome through negotiated settlement. I've invited Vice President Šefčovič to a meeting of the Withdrawal Agreement Joint Committee in London to discuss this as soon as possible. However, to respond to the very grave and serious situation in Northern Ireland, we are clear there is a necessity to act to ensure the institutions can be restored as soon as possible. The Government is clear that proceeding with the bill is consistent with our obligations in international law and in support of our prior obligations in the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. And before any changes are made, we will consult businesses and people in Northern Ireland as our proposals are put forward. I want to be clear to the House that this is not about scrapping the protocol. Our aim is to deliver on the protocol's objectives. We will cement those provisions which are working in the protocol, including the common travel area, the single electricity market, and North-South cooperation, whilst fixing those elements that aren't, on the movement of goods, goods regulation, VAT, subsidy control and governance. The bill will put in place the necessary measures to lessen the burden on East-West trade and to ensure the people of Northern Ireland are able to access the same benefits as the people of Great Britain. The bill will ensure that goods moving and staying within the UK are freed of unnecessary bureaucracy through our new Green Channel. This respects Northern Ireland's place in the UK, in its customs territory, and protects the UK internal market. At the same time, it ensures that goods destined for the EU undergo the full checks and controls applied under EU law. This will be underpinned by data sharing arrangements that I've already set out. It will allow both East-West trade and the EU single market to be protected, whilst removing customs paperwork for goods remaining in the United Kingdom. The bill will remove regulatory barriers to goods made to UK standards being sold in Northern Ireland. Businesses will be able to choose between meeting UK or EU standards in a new dual regulatory regime. The bill will provide the government with the ability to decide on tax and spend policies across the whole of the United Kingdom. It will address issues related to governance, bringing the protocol in line with international norms. At the same time, it will take new measures to protect the EU single market by implementing robust penalties for those who seek to abuse the new system. And it will continue to ensure there is no hard border on the island of Ireland. I will publish more detail on these solutions in the coming weeks. And let me be crystal clear that even as we do so, we will continue to engage with the EU. The bill will contain an explicit power to give effect to a new revised protocol if we can reach an accommodation that meets our goal of protecting the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. We remain open to a negotiated solution, but the urgency of the situation means we can't afford to delay any longer. The UK has clear responsibilities as the sovereign government of Northern Ireland to ensure parity of esteem and the protection of economic rights. We are clear that the EU will not be negatively impacted in any way, just as we have ensured the protection of the EU single market since the existence of the protocol. We must restore the primacy of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement in all of its dimensions as the basis of the restoration of the executive. And we will do so through technical measures designed to achieve the stated objectives of the protocol, tailored to the reality of Northern Ireland. We will do so in a way that fundamentally respects both unions, that of the United Kingdom and of the EU. And we will live up to our commitments to all communities of Northern Ireland. As co-signatory of the co-guarantor of the Good Friday Belfast Agreement, we will take the necessary decisions to preserve peace and stability. I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Minister Stephen Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and we're grateful for advance sight of the statement from the Foreign Secretary. And I want to give apologies on behalf of the Shadow Foreign Secretary, who's unfortunately self-isolating due to COVID. It is over 2.5 years since the government negotiated and signed the withdrawal agreement. That deal included the Northern Ireland Protocol, which required, by its design, some trade barriers and checks in the Irish Sea. That was clear from the outset. It was a choice by this Prime Minister, by the government. And yet now, barely 2 years later, the government is trying to convince people its flagship achievement was not a negotiating triumph, but a deal so flawed that they cannot abide by it. Either they did not understand their own agreement, they were not upfront about the reality of it, or they intended to break it all along. The Prime Minister negotiated this deal, signed it, ran an election campaign on it. He must take responsibility for it and make it work. Mr. Speaker, the situation in Northern Ireland is incredibly serious. Power sharing has broken down. Stormont is not functioning and political tensions have risen. And people and communities across Northern Ireland face rising bills as the cost of living crisis deepens. The operation of the protocol has created new tensions that do need to be addressed by listening to all sides, to business and to consumers. And both the UK government and the EU need to show willing and good faith. This is not a time for political posturing or high-stakes brinkmanship. Everyone recognises that the situation in Northern Ireland is unique, and we want checks to be reduced to their absolute necessary minimum and for them to properly reflect trade-related risks. It cannot, for example, be right that goods leaving Great Britain that have no realistic prospect of leaving Northern Ireland, like supermarket sandwiches, face excessive burdens, and the EU needs to understand that practical reality. Unnecessary barriers will only hamper business, inhibit trade and undermine confidence and consent. But, Mr. Speaker, the Good Friday Agreement was one of the proudest achievements of the last Labour government. It is absolutely essential that it is protected, and that is why we need calm heads and responsible leadership. We need a UK government capable of the hard diplomatic graft to find solutions and an EU willing to show flexibility. But the right response to these challenges cannot simply be to breach our commitments. It is deeply troubling for the Foreign Secretary to be proposing a bill to apparently break the treaty that the government itself signed just 2 years ago. That will not resolve issues in Northern Ireland in the long term, and rather it will undermine trust and make a breakthrough more difficult. It would drive a downward spiral in our relationship with the EU that will have damaging consequences for British businesses and consumers. It's Cornish fishermen, County Down farmers and Scotch whisky makers who will lose out, holding back the economy while growth forecasts are already being revised down. But, Mr. Speaker, this goes beyond matters of trade. Britain should be a country that keeps its word. The rest of the world is looking at us and wondering if we're a country that they want to do business with. When we seek to negotiate new deals abroad, does the government want to make other countries question whether we will keep our end of the bargain? There are wide-ranging and damaging repercussions, undermining our ability to hold others to account for their own commitments, when we should, for example, be pulling together in support of Ukraine, not fuelling divisions with our European allies. Mr. Speaker, the right approach is for the government and the EU to work together to find practical solutions to these problems, to brief the media less and to negotiate more. There is no long-term unilateral solution. Only a solution that works for all sides and delivers for the people and businesses of Northern Ireland will have durability and provide the political stability that businesses crave and the public deserve. And we believe that that should begin with a veterinary agreement that would eliminate the vast majority of checks on produce going from Britain to Northern Ireland. New Zealand, Mr. Speaker, has an equivalence agreement, and it should not be beyond the government and the EU to negotiate one that reflects the unique circumstances in Northern Ireland. And we would also, Mr Speaker, negotiate with the EU for more flexibility on VAT in Northern Ireland to fully align Northern Ireland VAT rules with those of Great Britain. And we would use that to take VAT off Northern Ireland energy bills, funded by a one-off windfall tax on oil and gas producer profits, to help ease the cost of living crisis. If the government is determined to plough on with the bill the Foreign Secretary has proposed, will they agree to pre-legislative scrutiny by the Foreign Affairs Select Committee? And will they set out clearly to the House why this doesn't break international law? Mr Speaker, Labour wants to make Brexit work and for Britain to flourish outside the EU. We want the government... But Mr Speaker, we want the government to take responsibility for the deal it signed, to negotiate in good faith and to find practical solutions, not take reckless steps to prolong uncertainty in Northern Ireland and damage Britain's reputation. We want the EU to show the necessary flexibility to minimise all barriers and to work with the UK government and listen to all sides in Northern Ireland. That, Mr Speaker, is the right approach. That is the responsible approach, and it's what is in the long-term interests of the people of Northern Ireland and indeed the whole of the United Kingdom.
Secretary. Mr Speaker, our priority has to be, as the United Kingdom Government, peace and stability in Northern Ireland and the protection of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. It's vitally important that we get the executive back up and running and functioning, and we fix the very real issues with the Northern Ireland Protocol. I welcome the honourable gentleman's acknowledgement that there are issues with taxation, with customs, with procedures and bureaucracy. In order to fix those issues, it does require the EU to be open to changing the protocol. And as yet, and I've had 6 months of talks with Vice President Šefčovič, my predecessor had 12 months of talks. As yet, the EU have been unwilling to open the protocol. And without that, we cannot deal with the tax issue, we cannot deal with the customs issue, and we will not sort out the fundamental issues in Northern Ireland. And it is our responsibility as the government of the United Kingdom to restore peace, to restore the primacy of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, to get the executive up and running. And in answer to the honourable gentleman's question about legality, we are very clear that this is legal in international law, and we will be setting out our legal position in due course.
Now comes the Chair of the Select Committee, Simon Hall.
The first duty of government is to uphold the law. If it tries to bob and weave and duck around that duty when it's inconvenient, if government does that, then so will the governed. And then nothing is safe, not home, not liberty, not life itself. Not my words, but Margaret Thatcher's. Respect for the rule of law, Mr Speaker, runs deep in
You have been watching The Briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. Join me at 10 to 12 tomorrow for Prime Minister's Question Time. Up next, it's On the Money with Liam Halligan. But it's the hottest day of the year. You'll find out about all of that after the news.
Good afternoon, it's 1 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date. Now, as we've been hearing, the Foreign Secretary has set out plans to rewrite Britain's post-Brexit trading agreement, changing the rules on how goods enter Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK. Liz Truss said the political deadlock in Northern Ireland was very grave and that immediate action was needed to allow power sharing to resume at Stormont. The DUP has refused to enter the government unless the existing Northern Ireland Protocol is scrapped. Ms Truss said the government was still open to negotiations with the European Union and that the new measures from the British government don't break international law. Volunteer police officers will be given the power to use tasers under new plans by the Home Office. There are nearly 9,000 special constables in England and Wales, and they undertake the same duties as regular police officers. Amnesty International's called the move dangerous, saying misuse of tasers can lead to harm and even death. Earlier today, Boris Johnson told his cabinet that crime rates must be addressed and that making the streets safe is a government priority.
Because it's only when you have safe streets, when you have safe communities, that you get the confidence of business to invest and drive jobs and growth. And that is absolutely critical now as we deal with the aftershocks of COVID, we help people with their current costs, and we take the economy through a difficult patch.
The founder of a far-right terror group whose members plotted to carry out deadly attacks has been found guilty of involvement with the organisation. 27-year-old Alex Davies set up National Action 9 years ago and continued to associate with the group and its offshoot organisations after it was banned by the government in 2016. Well, that follows 19 other convictions of those who continued their membership after the group was outlawed. In international news now, and in Ukraine, the Deputy Prime Minister says the country is working on further stages of evacuating fighters from the steel plant in Mariupol. More than 260 servicemen have already been evacuated from the besieged Azovstal steelworks. Some are injured and have been taken to hospital in a Russian-controlled town. All evacuees will be subject to exchange. Michael Ryan, who's worked in NATO policy, told GBNews he thinks it's likely Moscow's trying to show goodwill to improve their negotiating position.
I would expect that there will be a prisoner swap. The Ukrainians have a significant number of Russian prisoners. The Russians would not be able to argue away in the style of propaganda that they're used to what would happen to these soldiers if they're not brought back alive. And so I would definitely see a transactional prisoner swap.
The rate of unemployment in the first quarter of the year dropped to the lowest it's been for almost 50 years. It's at 3.7%. The Office for National Statistics says the number of people in employment then rose to 29.5 million. However, figures also showed that in the 3 months to February, real pay value reduced by 2%, and that's the steepest decline in nearly a decade. The Governor of the Bank of England called the rising cost of food prices apocalyptic. Andrew Bailey gave the warning to MPs at a government select committee yesterday. Northern Ireland Secretary Brandon Lewis says he's surprised at the term used, but acknowledges the challenges people are currently facing. He says it's important the government offers packages of support and keeps global pressures under review. 4 chief inspectors are warning the criminal justice system is far from recovering from the pandemic and that some areas are